Welcome back to Counterculture with Pastor Mark and Andy. Hey, this week, Mark, I want to look at Mark.
Aren't you Pastor Andy, though?
No, not really. Mark chapter 7. It's only when I want to be.
Oh.
Mark chapter 7.
He made me be pastor again.
There's this whole narrative, right? Now, I don't want to be accused of only picking certain verses. So
I'd never accuse you of that.
This is true. Never. So I want to read it, and then I want you to comment on this has to do with counterculture. It says, now when the Pharisees gathered to him with some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem, they saw that some of his disciples ate with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. Sounds like me during haying season. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands properly, holding to the tradition of elders. And when they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And there are many other traditions that they observe, such as washing of cups and pots, copper vessels, and dining couches. The Pharisees and the scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the traditions of the elders, but eat with defiled hands?" And he said to them, "Well, did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites? As is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. You leave the commandments of God and hold to the tradition of men." And he said to them, "You have a fine way of rejecting the commandment of God in order to establish your traditions." So when we talk about counterculture, I think a lot of times, Mark, we're thinking about things that are happening outside in the world, right? And so we're talking about in the church, let's be counter the world out there. But this isn't what is happening in this passage. This is actually things that are happening in the synagogue, in the church, right? That there's all of a sudden this worship of tradition of men, right? Instead of really seeking and looking to God. So sometimes it seems to me like there might be a need for us to have a chat about how do we become countercultural even in our own churches.
I have no idea.
I'm joking. I'm hoping you have an idea.
Well, I think I'm picking up what you're laying down, because the church is a subculture. Mm-hmm. It has its own norms and stuff. And in that sense, are we just mimicking the rest of the world? Well, here's how the world does. Okay, but we have our own way of doing it too.
Right.
What are the 5 words that they say for years, they've said, will kill a church. I don't know it's 5, but I'm going to say it. This phrase that will kill a church. We've never done it that way before.
Yeah.
We've never done it that way before.
We've always done it
this
way.
This is the right way.
Right.
I've seen that a little bit in my own context of not my own local church necessarily, but in my denomination. There's been a kind of a revisiting of liturgical practices.
Yeah.
And I've had people say to me, "Well, I'm an old Catholic, okay? So people say, well, you can't worship." I had someone tell me this. You can't worship in those big cathedrals in Europe. And then I heard an evangelist say one time when he was preaching, he had shared about, it was in a camp meeting, Singspiration kind of thing. He was talking about, I was preaching a revival at this church. It was brand new. It was beautiful. He said, "We can't worship God here." I'm like, wait a minute. Why? Does God prefer trash? Does he prefer duct tape on the floor, on the carpet to hold together, and then we can worship God? I think, and I'm glad you read 9, you find a way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. Yeah. And I wonder how many times, I think it's a lot, that we have said, well, we've never done it that way. That's not how we do things here.
Right.
I remember the liturgical piece. I've done communion for years. I'd done it. You pass the tray. Mm-hmm. They take the wafer, they take the little cup, and you're hoping that they don't spill it all over.
That's how we did it. That's the right way.
And I remember, as in the Catholic Church, you do it by intinction. You come up, and I got a funny story about that, by the way. But anyway, the priest. I'm old school. They would lay it on your tongue, but then they start putting it in your hand and stuff. And so then I went to seminary, and they were doing it by intinction. Where you take the wafer and you dip it in there, and then you stuff this. And it was a beautiful thing. And so I remember the first time I did it. I mean, boy, and here was what was even funnier is I had Gregorian chant playing over the sound system while we were doing this, which is very, I can really focus on the Lord when I get into that. It is, we can become so critical. I go back to, maybe this is my phrase for the day. You spot it, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
When we criticize, well, this is how the world is doing things. We have our ways too.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, let's take it even more subculture. How do you do things at your house?
Mm-hmm.
I remember my wife asked me one time when we first got married, she goes, how do you like your pork chops cooked? I said, well, my mother did them this way. Then the fight was on. But I learned quickly that was not the right answer. Do not, any young man getting married, do not say that to your wife. Okay. We've established our own kind of subculture. But do we come back to the Word? Here's what's interesting. J.B. Chapman was a general superintendent in the Church of the Nazarene, I think, in the 40s. And he wrote an article in the old Herald of Holiness. My people, Nazarenes, you'll understand this. It was our denominational magazine. And he wrote an article in 1943. And the name of the title was, Doesn't Anybody Get Saved Around Here Anymore? In 1943, early 1940s. Because we had moved away already from, it was just about us.
Yep.
I remember saying to a lady in my church, I said, well, this is a great opportunity for you to invite your unsaved friends. She goes, I don't have any. I said, go get some.
Yeah.
You'd have thought I was a heretic. Because I said, go, and how, I just read this in my devotion this morning too, you get saved, and when we start moving away, you don't want to hang around them anymore. I heard that.
Right.
And then we wonder, how do we lead anybody to the Lord? If so I had a fun experience here. It was before the lockdown and all this stuff, and a guy affiliated with my church, and I called him up and said, hey, how you doing? I go, I'm sitting here at this particular establishment. He goes, why don't you come on down, Pastor? and I said, well, I'm getting ready to go do something, and but I said, maybe another time. And I got off the phone with him, and I thought, I got time. I'm going down. And so I went into this establishment, which was not
McDonald's.
It was not McDonald's.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there with a couple of his friends, not at the bar, but over at the table. And they had a drink. And I walk in, and he just lit up.
That's all.
And introduced me to his buddies. Yeah. This is my pastor. I said, well, I wanted to come down. I said, I had an extra time. I just wanted to come down and say hi. I can't stay, whatever. Now, I have told my people, you see me coming out of a bar, it's not because I've been in there drinking.
Right.
It's because I've probably been in there meeting somewhere. Some of these bars have the best food, by the way.
Amen.
But anyway, how easy it is for us to judge. Well, you're not doing it right. I have had, it's so funny, this lockdown has caused, I've had people, what's a pastor to do? I've had people tell me, Pastor, you could have preached an hour longer today. You were on fire today. And then I've had people, you're preaching too long, Pastor. I've had people, you need to quit using humor, Pastor, because people aren't taking the word seriously. But then I'll get people say, man, when you told that story, I identified with that. That's a funny story, Pastor, but I got it. I got it. Jesus told stories all the time.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because I think too often, we listen to a sermon, we watch a video on here, we do life, and we just see things from our perspective. And if we get it, we get it. And if we don't, we don't. But if we don't get it, then we just assume everybody else wouldn't get it either. I think that's one of the great things about the word is that we can read the same passage. Like you and I just looked at the exact same passage. We would probably preach two totally different sermons on that passage because I was focused on 1 through 8, and you're like, I hope you're going to read 9 too, because that's where I would go. And I'm looking at that and saying, well, that's the neat part about the word, right? But when you translate that into methodology, I think that's one of the neat things about a body of believers as well. We don't all do the same thing. We don't look at things the same way, right? We get so mad and irritated when people don't see what we see. How could you not get that? I can remember, I'm sure that you've been there maybe once or twice, but I've been there a lot where, you're thinking about a Bible study or something, you're prepping for it, you're ready for it, you got it all down, you're like, you can see how it's going to go. This person is going to say this person is going to say that. And then you get into it, and one question in, somebody goes, woof. And you're like, well, wait a minute. What about all my prep? What about all that I just did? You're like, now you're stuck with, do I stay on my track?
Yes.
Or do I go this way where I think maybe God is going, where he's kind of been the whole fish hook thing and gone, let's go this way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, slice. That's what I call it from a golf world. Yeah, it's a slice. Well, and it is, in reading this, and I just mentioned this last night in my prayer meeting. Something I've read is we have got to shift our idea that church is just the building, and anything that qualifies as church has to be done in the building.
At least through the building, if not in the building.
In the building or through the building, exactly. And God has just shown me, Mark, walk slowly through the crowd, and I'll tell you where you need to do ministry. I have done ministry. I prefer to do ministry the way Jesus did, eating with people. Yeah. And so there's been more ministry. Now, have they darkened the doors? Well, it didn't count then. In whose economy?
Well, I would look at the story you just told a few minutes ago. Is that ministry? Guy called you, invited you to an establishment that's not a church. You went down. He introduced you to a couple of his buddies. Is that not ministry? And most people would look at it based on the traditions of men, and they would say, no, not ministry.
And why is the pastor going into that establishment?
No, if you had gone into that establishment and pulled out your drunken friend, well, then that would be ministry, because you were there and you were helping him in a drunken state. Yeah. I said, Jesus is about relationships. Anytime that we can enhance our own relationship with Jesus, other people's relationship with Jesus, start people on a relationship with Jesus, that's ministry. Mm-hmm. But too often, no, didn't include a sermon, didn't include scripture, if you had walked into that bar and you had said, as he introduced you, your first words were, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only," is that now ministry? Yeah. Because you quoted a scripture.
Well, to make it really spiritual in ministry, I would have received an offering.
Yeah, if you buy me the beer, then it's okay.
Right, there you go.
It's not my fault. I got paid.
That's why as we always say, pastors always joke, well, we need to receive an offering so we can do something spiritual.
That's exactly right. And that's what the whole take of this is. That there's this idea. That the traditions, how I do life, equals what God thinks and how God does.
Yes.
And it is so amazing to me that part of countercultural is maybe there's some things within our church that we need to start really looking at and saying, I love your whole communion thing, because I was always... we went prepared very carefully, the little glass, not plastic, because the little glass cups, right? And I grew up using unsalted crackers, which I'm sure is totally wrong in most places, right? But that's what we did, and it got passed along. And it was an important thing. And so the first time I went to a candlelight Christmas service at a Presbyterian church, they had bread cubes.
Yes.
I was totally blown away. How could you do communion like that?
And it was a funny story. When I was in my doctoral work, we had a table full of snacks out there. And one of the people that was there we had the professors, but then we had people who were caregivers, and they were there to help kind of when we went into our small groups and stuff. And the one lady was talking about someone had brought in these donuts. Do you remember the old Hostess plain cake donuts?
Yes.
Dipped in milk. I don't I don't drink a lot of milk, but dipped in milk. And so I was talking about, I said, that's one of my favorite things. You know what showed up the next morning? She goes, are those the right ones? She said, she brought it. So here's what's funny. I'm meeting in a house church.
Yeah.
And this friend of mine says, Mark, we're going to have communion that night. And I was sharing this story with him. He goes, I want you to lead us in communion that night. And he pulled the cloth off of the elements. You know what the elements were that night?
The donuts.
Donuts and milk. Now,
what do you do?
oh, what do you do? You know what I did? I shared that. He goes, share the story, Mark. Do you know? Now, what is communion? What is the real a means of grace? Is what Wesley said.
Absolutely.
Do you think that was not bringing me right back into the presence of the Lord? That said to me, not only Jesus says, I died for you, but now it says, this lady, as we say, what do we say? Well, I love you in Christian love. I love what JD said. Yeah, I got to put a disclaimer in there because I couldn't love you other than through Jesus. But I love how JD Wells says, as the Lord loves, so I love you. That's a wonderful way to say it. You know, instead of saying, well, I love you, and he said, as the Lord loves you. Oh my gosh! So talk about that was such a powerful moment for, and other people got it. It wasn't, well, you're just being sacrilegious. No, it was like that was a moment of grace that brought us into the very presence of God, and people got in the book A Guide to Prayer. There's a story in there of these guys that were prisoners of war, and they didn't have elements. They had nothing to use for communion. You know, so what they did? This is really heretical. They pretended they had it.
Little Peter Panish.
Yes. But they were like, and they went through the motions. Was it wrong? That brought them, that's all they had. That's all they had.
Brought them into remembrance.
Exactly, bring them into remembrance. And so
love it.
It is so funny how we have, well, that doesn't count. I remember a lady saying to me one time, it was summer in Kansas, and I had done a buzz cut for the summer. And I went in that morning, and she goes, well, Jesus wouldn't have his hair like that. I says, no, he would probably down to his shoulder. No, he would have had it cut like any nice young Christian man would. And I said, okay, so now we're telling Jesus how to do it.
And he would have looked this way, He would have worn a tie, too.
And he wouldn't have had the beard.
Yeah, definitely. And he would have ironed his shirt.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Well, listen, it sounds to me like you just found the whole topic for another Moments with Mark, right? That whole I need to love you like Jesus, but the whole donut communion.
The Lord loves you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that we'll be hearing
Write that down,
soon.
producer.
There we go. Listen, we're going to wrap up Counterculture before my producer and Mark end up having words on the show. We're glad that you joined us. Glad that you're thinking counterculture-ish. And we're just asking you, man, open up your Bible, think a little differently, right? We do it naturally. Not everybody does it. Some people just listen and obey. That's not how we tend to be. But we are willing to listen and think about things. That's what we want you to do. So we'll see you again on Counterculture.